They said we were perfect. At the dinner party last night, my best friend toasted us with a smile on her face and a tear in her eye. To James and Emily, the kind of couple we all want to be. Everyone clapped. Someone whistled. I smiled. I even leaned into him when he kissed my cheek. But what no one saw was how hard it was for me to breathe. When we got home, I sat in the dark living room while he took off his suit and hummed one of his favorite songs. The same song he played on our wedding night. I stared at the reflection of our picture hanging on the wall. James laughing, me frozen in a smile that never quite reached my eyes. I remember when that photo was taken. I remember exactly what I was thinking. This dress fits too tight. These heels hurt. I don't think I'm ready for this. And yet I said I do. My name is Emily. I'm 29 years old. I live in Charleston, South Carolina, in a beautiful home with a husband who adores me. To the world I'm lucky. But I don't feel lucky. I feel like I'm holding my breath all the time. Like any moment the truth inside me will spill out and drown everything we built. James is a good man. Better than I ever deserved. He brings me flowers without a reason. He memorizes the way I like my coffee. He holds my hand in crowded rooms and tells people I'm the best thing that ever happened to him. But I haven't told him the truth. Not even once. Not even last night when I almost did. I had walked into the kitchen, heart pounding, lips trembling. I wanted to say something, anything, but then he smiled at me with that soft look he always gives me and I froze. Because how do you hurt someone who's never hurt you? He kissed me on the forehead and whispered, "You looked so beautiful tonight." And in that moment, I felt like I was dying inside. We live in a house that looks like something out of a magazine. White picket fence. Garden with flowers that bloom even when I forget to water them. A blue front door that James painted himself the week we moved in. People walk by and slow down just to stare at it. One of our neighbors once told me, "Your home feels like peace." And I smiled. Because that's what you do when you're the woman in the perfect couple. Inside, the house is even more beautiful. Warm lights, matching curtains, polished hardwood floors. James believes a clean home creates a clear mind, so every corner is always spotless. Except mine. There's a drawer in my bedside table that's full of things I don't want to look at. Old letters. A necklace I haven't worn in years. A picture of someone who doesn't live in this house. James doesn't know what's in there. I don't think he wants to. He wakes up every morning before me and makes coffee just the way I like it. 1 sugar, a splash of almond milk. He never forgets. Even when I forget how to thank him properly. Sometimes I stare at my cup and wonder how something so warm can feel so cold in my hands. In the evenings he comes home with stories from work. James is a senior architect. His voice lights up when he talks about building things. Homes, bridges, futures. I sit across from him and nod. Smile. Pretend. He always asks how my day was. I always say, fine. He never presses. He thinks he's giving me space. But what he's really giving me is a place to hide. Last Friday he came home with takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. He had a goofy grin on his face and 2 bags in his hands. "I figured you could use a break from cooking," he said, placing the food on the table. I thanked him and went to get plates. As we ate, he told me a story about his coworker getting engaged. I barely heard a word. Because while he was talking about wedding rings and proposals, I was thinking about the night I said yes to him, and how my heart had stayed quiet even then. After dinner we sat on the couch. He played with my fingers and brushed my hair behind my ear. I tried to focus on the TV, on the sound of laughter in the background, on anything but him. "Hey," he said softly, "I've been thinking, maybe it's time we start talking about the next chapter." I blinked, confused. "What chapter?" "You know, kids." He looked at me with such hope, such warmth. And I felt my chest tighten. "I even made a list," he added, reaching into his coat pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. It had names. Baby names. Emma if it's a girl. Jacob if it's a boy. I forced a smile. Those are nice. But inside, everything collapsed. I excused myself, went into the bathroom, turned on the faucet and stared at myself in the mirror. My hands were shaking. I didn't want to be a mother. Not because I hate children. Not because I don't want a family. but because I couldn't imagine bringing a child into a home where love was missing on one side. James would be a wonderful father. He already is, to the version of me he thinks he married. But that's not me. I stood there for a long time, breathing deeply, letting the sound of running water drown out the sound of my own thoughts. And when I came back, I told him I was tired. We went to bed in silence. As he pulled the blanket over us and whispered good night, I stared at the ceiling. And all I could think was, this house may be beautiful, but it feels like a prison with flowers on the walls. He kissed my shoulder, called me his light, and all I could do was close my eyes and pray for morning to come quickly. There was a time I believed in forever. Not the kind of forever people write in captions or carve into tree trunks. The kind you feel when someone looks at you like you're the only thing they see, even in a room full of people. That someone was Daniel. I met him when I was 22, working at a bookstore downtown while trying to figure out what I wanted from life. He walked in one rainy afternoon looking for a gift for his sister. He didn't find the book, but he found me. And I found something I didn't know I was missing. Warmth that didn't feel forced. Silence that wasn't awkward. A kind of safety that didn't ask to be earned. We talked for hours that day. He came back the next. By the end of that week we were inseparable. Daniel wasn't perfect. He was messy, unpredictable, sometimes too honest. But he loved me with a kind of rawness that scared me, in the best way. We would take midnight walks with no destination. He'd hold my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. He told me I made him believe in soft things again. I remember once he said, "You're my future." Not a maybe. A promise. And I believed him. But promises break. Not always out of betrayal, sometimes just because life bends them out of shape. His father had a stroke. His mother begged him to come home, to take care of the family business in another state. I offered to go with him. He said he couldn't ask that of me. I told him he didn't have to, I wanted to. But 2 weeks later he left, and I stayed. We promised to try long distance. We failed. Calls became shorter. Messages lost their softness. And eventually the silence was louder than any goodbye. I never heard him say it was over. But when my birthday passed without a call, I knew. For months I woke up hoping to see his name on my phone. It never came. People said I should move on. That I was too young to be stuck in a love story that wasn't written in full. So I tried. That's when James came along. He was calm. Stable. Nothing like Daniel. He came into the bookstore one afternoon and asked for help picking a poetry book. I remember how gentle his voice was, and how kind his eyes looked. We talked. He listened. He didn't rush me. He took me to quiet cafes, never pressured me to laugh when I didn't want to. He asked before touching my hand. He never made me feel like I had to be anyone but quiet. I wasn't ready for him. But I said yes anyway. Because I thought stillness was safer than passion. That maybe if someone was good to me, I'd eventually learn to love them back. I didn't tell him about Daniel. Not fully. He knew there was someone, but not the depth. Not the gravity of it. We got engaged 6 months later. The night before our wedding I almost called it off. I sat by the window in my parents' guest room, holding the necklace Daniel gave me, a tiny gold heart with my name engraved on it. I held it so tightly my palm hurt. I wrote a letter to James. I even sealed it. But I never gave it to him. The next morning I wore white, smiled for the photos, said the vows, and walked into a life that felt clean on the outside but cluttered inside. I moved the necklace to the back of a drawer, buried the letter under old receipts, and told myself it was time to grow up. Time to stop chasing ghosts. But here's what no one tells you. Ghosts don't stay buried. They whisper. They wait. They don't need to knock, because you left the door open the day you refused to shut it. And last night after James went to bed, I found that necklace again. I don't know what made me open that drawer. But there it was. Still warm from memory. My hands shook. My chest felt tight. I held it against my heart and closed my eyes. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just felt everything I had tried not to feel for years. I married James because he didn't scare me. But I forgot. Love is supposed to make you feel something. The morning after I found that necklace, I woke up feeling like someone else had been sleeping in my skin. James brought me coffee in bed. He kissed my forehead like he always does. He sat next to me and asked if I slept well. "You looked peaceful," he said. And I smiled. I always smile. Later that day I walked into the kitchen and saw him writing something in a small notebook. He quickly closed it when I entered. "What was that?" I asked gently. "Nothing," he smiled. "Just something I'm working on." I didn't ask more. Because I was afraid to know what he's thinking. Because deep down I knew he was starting to sense it. The shift, the absence, the quiet unraveling. That afternoon Claire came over. Claire's been my best friend since college. She's the one person who's always seen through me. We sat by the window sipping chamomile tea. She stared at me for a while before saying anything. "You look thinner," she said. "Stress," I lied. She didn't believe me. "Emily, you know you don't have to pretend with me, right?" I stayed quiet. "Is it James?" I nodded slowly. My fingers tightened around the mug. "He hasn't done anything wrong, Claire. That's the problem. Skid. He's kind. He's everything I should want. But you don't love him." I looked down. I don't know what love feels like anymore. Claire reached over and took my hand. "You do," she said. "You just haven't felt it in a while." We sat in silence for a moment. Then she said something I wasn't ready for. "You look like someone carrying love that doesn't belong to you." I felt my throat close. My eyes stung. But I didn't cry. Not then. That night James brought home candles, the kind I used to love. He cooked dinner. He lit the table. He played our wedding playlist. And he wore the shirt I once told him he looked most handsome in. "Date night," he said with a grin. "Just us." I sat there across from him, the soft glow of candlelight on his face, and I felt like a stranger in my own life. He reached for my hand halfway through the meal. "Are you okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Just tired." After dinner we sat on the couch. He held me. I stayed stiff. He whispered into my hair. "You don't talk as much anymore." I smiled and said, "I've just been thinking a lot." "About what?" I paused. "About everything." He held me tighter. "We can get through anything, Emily. You know that, right?" I wanted to believe him. I really did. But belief doesn't fix what's broken when it wasn't supposed to be built in the first place. That night I couldn't sleep. The necklace was still in my nightstand. At 2:37 a.m. I got up and opened the drawer again. I took it out. I held it in my palm. And this time I opened the small folded paper beneath it. It was the letter I had written to James the night before our wedding. The one I never gave him. "James, if you're reading this, it means I found the courage to be honest. You're wonderful. But my heart is somewhere else. I'm afraid of hurting you, but I'm more afraid of spending a lifetime pretending I'm happy. I'm sorry. I hope you find someone who gives you the love you give so freely." I had signed it and sealed it, and then buried it under silence. And now, almost 3 years later, I was reading my own truth as if someone else had written it. I sat on the bedroom floor, letter in one hand, necklace in the other, and finally, I cried. Not quiet tears. Real sobs. The kind that come from the pit of your stomach. I pressed my face into the blanket to muffle the sound. James was asleep just a few feet away. He didn't deserve this. And I didn't know how to fix it anymore. The next morning, James was unusually quiet. He didn't make coffee. He didn't kiss my forehead. When I walked into the kitchen, he was sitting at the table, the small notebook open. "You okay?" I asked. He looked up. His eyes were red. "Yeah, just going through some old thoughts." I nodded and poured myself a cup of coffee. When I left for work, he hugged me a little longer than usual. When I turned to walk away, I swear I saw something shift in his eyes. Like he was preparing himself for something. Or maybe, letting go. That evening, Claire texted me. "Did you tell him?" I didn't reply. Because I didn't know what I would say. I knew I couldn't keep pretending. But I also didn't know how to stop, without breaking someone who had only ever loved me. I don't know what finally pushed me to say it. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was that I couldn't look him in the eyes anymore without feeling like I was stealing something he didn't know he was giving. Maybe it was because I was starting to lose pieces of myself, and I didn't want to forget who I really was. It was a Sunday evening. James was sitting on the couch watching a documentary about bridges. He looked peaceful, his legs stretched out, one arm resting on the backrest, the same spot where I used to lean my head during our early days. I stood behind the kitchen counter staring at him for a long time. And then I spoke. "James," I said quietly. He muted the TV and looked at me, smiling. "Yeah. Can we talk?" His smile faded, but he nodded. "Of course. Everything okay?" I walked over slowly, sat down beside him. My palms were damp. "Not really," I whispered. He turned to face me fully, his eyes scanning mine. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath. "There's something I've been keeping from you. For a long time." He didn't speak. Just waited. So quiet. "It's not easy to say," I continued, "because I never wanted to hurt you. But keeping it in, it's been hurting both of us anyway." He leaned forward slightly. "And whatever it is, we can work through it. Just tell me." My throat tightened. I looked down at my hands. "I don't think I ever really loved you, James." The words fell like shattered glass. But irreversible. He didn't flinch. Didn't look away. Just sat still, like he had expected it. Like it had finally arrived. "I married you because I wanted to move on from someone else. I thought, maybe love would grow with time. Maybe kindness would be enough. And you've been nothing but kind." My voice cracked. "You've been patient, gentle, generous, and I've been pretending. Every single day." James slowly sat back against the couch. His eyes were glistening now. But he didn't wipe them. "Is it Daniel?" he asked. I nodded once. "I don't even know if I love him anymore. It's not about him. It's about me, not knowing who I am in this marriage. Not knowing how to give you what you give me." He exhaled, long and quiet. Then he smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind that comes when pain finally finds a voice. "I think I always knew," he said. "Not the details. Not the name. But I saw it. In your eyes. In the way you smiled when people praised us." I closed my eyes. A single tear escaped. "I'm sorry." He nodded. "I know. You didn't deserve this. You deserve someone who looks at you and sees the world." He gave a small, broken laugh. "I thought maybe, if I loved you hard enough, it would eventually be returned." I reached for his hand, but he gently pulled it away. Not harshly, just honestly. "I don't hate you, Em," he said. "But I won't keep holding on to a ghost." I felt my heart twist. "I was going to leave before the wedding," I admitted. "I wrote you a letter. I sealed it. I buried it." "I know," he whispered. I looked up, startled. "You knew?" He nodded slowly. "I found it 6 months after we got married. You hid it under old receipts. I read it. Every word." I stared at him, breathless. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I hoped it would change. That maybe we'd write a new letter. One that ended better." A lump formed in my throat. "You've been living with this truth for almost 3 years?" "Yes," he said simply. "Because I loved you." Silence filled the room like fog. Not angry. Not bitter. Just heavy with truth. He stood up, walked toward the hallway. Then he paused and looked back. "I want you to be happy, Emily. Even if it's not with me. Especially if it's not with me." And then he walked into the bedroom and gently closed the door. I sat on the couch for a long time after that. Not crying. Not moving. Just breathing. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't pretending. And it hurt in ways I wasn't ready for. As the door clicked shut, I realized the truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes, it breaks the only thing that ever held you together. I moved out 5 days later. Claire came to help me pack. We didn't talk much. She just hugged me every few hours, reminded me to drink water, and carried boxes to her car. I didn't take everything. Just my clothes. My books. And a small wooden box I hadn't opened in years. James didn't say much. He didn't offer to help or stop me. But he placed a thermos of coffee on the counter before he left for work that morning. My favorite blend. The silence between us wasn't cruel. It wasn't angry. It was sacred. Like two people finally letting go of something they were both afraid to lose, even though it had never truly belonged to either of them. I stayed at Claire's place for a while. In her guest room, the one with the lilac bedsheets and a view of the backyard. Every morning I'd sit by the window with my coffee and just breathe. Sounds simple. But when you've spent years holding your breath, even breathing feels new. I started journaling again. Not to analyze or fix anything. Just to hear myself. My words were awkward at first. Short. But soon they grew longer, fuller, softer. Dear me. You are not cruel. You made a mistake, but it didn't come from hate. Came from fear. And now, you are learning. I didn't try to contact James. And he didn't contact me. It wasn't avoidance. It was respect. One evening, Claire handed me a small envelope. He asked me to give you this, she said quietly. It was the notebook. The one I'd seen him writing in. Inside it was a single page written in his familiar, careful handwriting. I read your letter again. The one from before our wedding. And this time, I read it not as a husband but as someone who loved you even when you couldn't love back. I forgive you. I hope you forgive yourself too. James. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't moved, but because I finally felt light. Some time passed. I found a small apartment near the bookstore where I used to work. It wasn't fancy, but it had a balcony and good sunlight. I painted the walls pale yellow. I bought myself fresh flowers every weekend. Lilies. Like the ones James used to bring. But no. I brought them for me. I joined a local writing group at the library. 8 women. All carrying different heartbreaks. We sat in a circle and read our stories out loud. Sometimes with laughter, often with tears. One night I shared mine. Not all of it. Just enough. Afterward, a woman walked up to me and said, "Thank you. You said what I've never had the courage to say." And I realized, maybe my pain wasn't just mine. Maybe it could be someone else's permission to heal too. One afternoon, while unpacking an old box, I found the necklace. The one Daniel gave me. I held it for a long time. Then I placed it in the notebook James had returned. Closed it gently. And put them both in the back of my closet. Not as a rejection. But as a remembrance. Some things aren't meant to be thrown away. But they're not meant to be carried forever either. People still tell me I was lucky. That James and I were perfect. But I've learned that the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell with a smile. If you've ever smiled through silence, I see you. Tell me your story in the comments. Maybe we can breathe together.